Hey there, friends and enemies, Joper here again, and today I want to talk about Throne and Liberty as official launch is tomorrow, but I've been playing a ton of early access and really enjoying myself so far. I've been playing on the PS5, and the reason that's important to me is that this feels like one of the best console MMOs we've gotten in quite some time. Now, I know the game is far from perfect, and I do feel like it could struggle more on PC because of some of the issues that it does have and the competition in that space. However, on console, I think this could really have a long-term fan base because of what it does in comparison with other console MMOs. Now, don't get me wrong, Final Fantasy XIV is tremendous. However, it doesn't really feel much like an MMO for the first 50 or so hours as you are going through the storyline, and even after that, there are lots of parts where it pulls you away from your crew if you are trying to team up with other players, as you have to go do solo story missions. And that can be incredibly frustrating if you are looking for an MMO experience. Then you have ESO, which is very good as well, but I think struggles because of how much content there is and how wide the player base ultimately gets, taking on a bunch of different things. It is nice to feel like you are in at the ground floor with a new MMO, and Throne and Liberty gives you that opportunity, at least here in the West, starting in October. Now, the gameplay is interesting to me because I think it has a lot of potential. It's not as action heavy as something like a Black Desert Online, but that game felt difficult to play on console, in my opinion, especially at first. I know it's improved tremendously as the game has gone along, but initially it did feel like it wasn't really built for console and controller players, whereas Throne and Liberty does a very good job, I believe, of allowing controller players to really have access to the various skills. Now, the gameplay improves a lot, to be honest, as the game goes on. As you get all of the upgrades, you start to really min-max your characters and your builds. But some of the things this game does that other games struggle with, especially on console, is 100-player open world boss battles or castle sieges where you're taking on other players in PvP, and just the overwhelming number is actually insane. And I found that the loading and the issues that I face in Throne and Liberty on PlayStation 5 are far less than I felt in other games. ESO, for all the potential that the game has and some of the PvP that it does, I feel like I lag quite a bit when I'm playing on PS5 with that game in comparison to other MMOs. And maybe that's just the server I'm in or whatever the case may be, but it's definitely felt cleaner for me playing Throne and Liberty. And again, things change, so this is just an initial impression with my early access time, but I felt like the game is really, really smooth. The movement is fantastic when you're changing from your different morphs as you're flying through the air, you're running on the ground, all that kind of good stuff. It does feel like travel is very nice, and there's a lot to do, so much so that it can feel almost overwhelming at times between contracts and quests and everything going on. But I do feel like it does feel new and fresh. There's so many players everywhere that it feels great. And we haven't even hit the full launch where the game will be free to play. So everyone who's jumped in now is a paid player, meaning that it should just add a ton of population to the game once it does go free to play. So I know paying for early access is kind of sketchy, but I do feel like it probably allowed them to test some things out and ramp up some of the servers in a way that just launching the game without that might have been a problem. Now, some of the things that I've really enjoyed. Some of the storylines are fun, in my opinion. Kind of generic MMO stuff at times. Maybe not, definitely not as invigorating early game as something like Final Fantasy XIV, which is understandable. That almost feels like the first 50 hours are a single player story game, which is kind of wild to me. But the co-op is seamless. The dungeons can be very difficult, even in the early instances, if you're not paying attention. Luckily, if you are playing a tank or a support, there's one of those for every team that you have, one of each. So you can really play DPS characters if you want, and the matchmaking doesn't take all that long from what I've experienced so far. I do feel like as you go, maybe you finding a team to take on dungeons and everything routinely would be a good idea. But for now, I do feel like the game is in a solid state with regards to that. Same thing with guilds. Finding guilds super easy. Join one right away. You get rewards. You can meet other players. It does feel like they have a lot of the things in the game that are necessary for it to be a long-term success. Again, competition in the space on PC is absolutely crazy. There's so many different options and so many different games people are playing, and it's just hard to pry folks away from World of Warcraft or games like that they've spent so much time, money, and energy into for a brand new game that does some really good things in my opinion, but maybe doesn't break the mold in a way that I think would get people as excited as a game that does something completely unique. I've talked about it on the channel in the past. This week or this month on console, we have Throne and Liberty and New World Aeternum dropping. The best thing for Throne and Liberty is that it's free to play, so everyone can try it if they're fans of MMOs. Then you have New World, which is going to cost money, and that might be a bit more hit or miss. So I would imagine on console where you don't have other free-to-play options. You have ESO, which is free, but like you have to pay for ESO Plus to get benefit after you've been playing for a while. Final Fantasy XIV has that free trial, but like I said, doesn't truly feel like an MMO for quite some time. And Throne and Liberty has the advantage there, and I think it could really capitalize on this market that is lacking quite a bit. Plus, because it is built for next gen, it is going to be a bit more polished rather than dealing with ESO and Final Fantasy XIV, which have still been around for last gen, and those might not have the same capabilities as Throne and Liberty ultimately has with loading speeds and all that kind of good stuff. That's why it likely feels better when you have all these players on your screen at any given time. So I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you guys think about Throne and Liberty so far? Is it a game that you'll be playing? I'm really enjoying it. I'm going to stick with it for the foreseeable future. It's going to be hard. I mentioned this on Twitter, but like I have a feeling I'm going to be putting over 100 hours into Throne and Liberty and Metaphor ReFantazio and Dragon Age the Veilguard, which is absolutely insane. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. My name is Jopa. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe. As always, have a good one. I'll catch you all later.